Hello and welcome to revision lesson number 2 from Geography Rocks. My name's Mrs. Wingham and today's lesson is going to be on atmospheric hazards. So let's make a start. Are you able to name the diagram on the left hand side? Hopefully you've all recognised that it is the atmospheric circulation model. In a moment this box will disappear. When it does so, pause the video and spend 90 seconds reading the information about atmospheric circulation. After that, the screen will go blank, or you can move on and write down what you can remember. Are you ready to set your timer? 90 seconds. Let's take a look at the information. Please pause the video as soon as the information appears for those 90 seconds. Atmospheric circulation involves a number of interconnected circular air movements called cells. Sinking air creates high pressure and rising air creates low pressure. Surface winds move from high to low pressure, transferring heat and moisture from one area to another. These winds curve due to the Earth's rotation and change seasonally as the tilt and rotation of the Earth cause relative changes in the position of the overhead sun. Pause now, read through again, and then see what you can remember. Okay, use a revision card or a post-it note like this and try to write down everything that you can remember about atmospheric circulation. Some clues will appear to help you formulate your answer. Please pause whenever needed to build up your response. So, we remember that the circular air movements are called what? Sinking air creates what type of pressure? Low pressure is caused by? Why do the winds curve? And why are there seasonal changes? If you're unsure, go back and listen through the information once more. Good luck. Okay, moving on, let's take a look at tropical storms. A tropical storm is a huge storm. They're sometimes called hurricanes, cyclones and typhoons, depending on where they occur in the world. Just be prepared in an exam to read a question about a cyclone. And if you've studied a hurricane, don't panic. They're the same thing. They've just happened in different places around the world. Once again, expect to see a world map. You might be asked to describe the distribution of tropical storms. Remember, that word distribution means where are tropical storms and where aren't they? So let's take a look. We can see clearly on the map the area highlighted orange shows where hurricanes, cyclones and typhoons occur. You can see a line called the equator, and hopefully you can identify that they occur north and south of the equator in a narrow band. They have to occur there because that's where the seas are warm. Take a look at this passage and let's see if we can fill in the gaps together. Rising what draws evaporated vapour up from the something surface, which cools and something to form towering thunderstorms. The condensing releases what, which powers the storm. The something effect causes the storm to do what? When the storm travels at over miles per hour, it is considered a tropical storm. The storm slows when it reaches land because. Pause here if you want to write this down, putting in your answers before checking the correct ones. Let's take a look. Rising air draws evaporated water up from the ocean surface, which cools and condenses to form towering thunderstorms. The condensing releases heat, which powers the storm. The Coriolis effect causes the storm to spin. When the storm travels at over 75 miles per hour, it is considered a tropical storm. The storm slows when it reaches land because energy supply is cut off. It might be worth pausing here and making a revision card explaining how tropical storms form. Let's take a look at this map. It shows the route of Typhoon Haiyan. The question has the word track in it. Track means describe the route. Which way did it go? So let's take a look here. So the storm has started out in the North Pacific Ocean over on the western side of Asia. It's travelled across the Philippines, particularly over the city of Tacloban. It's continued to travel northwesterly towards Vietnam, Cambodia and Thailand. On approaching the mainland, it's swerved north and towards China. You've got 5 minutes here to describe the primary and secondary effects of the tropical storm that you've studied. We studied Typhoon Haiyan. So let's take a look at some of these factors and see which ones you think are primary and secondary effects and which ones are just general facts. November 2013, Category 5, 90% of Tacloban, looting in Tacloban, 40,000 homes, 170 miles per hour, food, shelter, disease, 6,300, 6 million jobs lost, and 400 millimetres of rain. Pause here and draw a table. General facts, primary effects, and secondary effects. Let's take a look at some of these images. They show immediate responses to Typhoon Haiyan. We've got a helicopter in the first picture, providing rescue and also food supplies. We've got a field tent there on the right, providing medical facilities, operations and first aid care to reduce the number of deaths in the future. And down in the bottom we've got CAFOD, which is a non-governmental organisation which would help support the people immediately and longer term after the effects of the typhoon. It says there, can you explain how each of these benefited the people of the Philippines? In a real exam, you'd use figure numbers. So figure 1 shows, describe what it shows, and then say it benefited people because. You could try to use the phrases long term and short term. Try also perhaps to think about your own knowledge. What else happened in the immediate and longer term to help support the people of the Philippines? Here we're looking at some of the longer term responses. And again it says, can you explain how each of these benefited the people? So they tried to improve the roads. It's really important to get infrastructure rebuilt so that people can move from one place to another. It helps the economy redevelop and get back on its feet, but it also helps in supplying the necessary equipment to more rural communities. You can see there that they started to rebuild houses. They quickly re-established the rice crops so that they could feed people. And you can see that the US aid provided a recovery programme of rebuilding these little wooden shelters to give people security and safety in the forthcoming months when they were under pressure. Let's take a look at maybe a larger marked question. So the question's this: how can the impact of tropical storms be mitigated? In previous videos we've looked at that word mitigated before. It means reduced. So how can the impact of tropical storms be reduced? Once again we start to think about prediction, protection and planning. We're asked to use figure 1 and our own knowledge. So let's take a moment to look at figure 1. It's a cyclone shelter in Bangladesh. If you look closely, you'll see it's built on stilts. That's to allow the winds or floods to travel underneath. It has shutters over the windows to protect the building. And although it's hard for you to see, but just on the right hand side down low, there are some bikes. Now these bicycles are there to give rural communities a warning evacuation. So people get on the bikes, cycle out to rural areas and give them the warning that they need to come to an evacuation centre. So let's take a look. There are many ways to reduce the impact of tropical storms. Figure 1 shows a cyclone shelter in Bangladesh. This can help protect people in the event of a storm. They are built on high land and are on stilts, so reduces the risk of flooding and damage. They have bikes to help get the word to rural areas where there is less communication. Areas such as the Philippines have improved their prediction methods and the government can now send out a cyclone warning signal. Planning is also important. This involves education and media campaigns to make sure people know what to do in an emergency. Make sure if you're asked to use a figure that you address that initially. Figure 1 shows, figure 8 shows. And then use your own knowledge and be clear that you're doing so. From my own knowledge, I know that. On the next slide, there's a case study card on Typhoon Haiyan. Spend 5 minutes or so jotting down what information you think will appear on the card and then add notes to your card when you see it. Pause the video here and spend 5 minutes writing down what you know about Typhoon Haiyan. Good luck. Welcome back. On the slide you can see a detailed revision card on Typhoon Haiyan. It talks about the causes, it talks about the effects particularly on Tacloban. You've got a picture of Tacloban down on the bottom right. You've got a map to show the track, the route of Typhoon Haiyan. You've also got primary and secondary effects and immediate and long-term responses. Once you've made a revision card like this, it's important that you use it. So make the card and then test yourself. Turn the card over and try to write down as many things as you can. An examiner will be impressed if you can remember a fact or a statistic, so perhaps note that it is a Category 5 storm. Try to remember that 90% of Tacloban was destroyed and that over 6,000 people were killed. You've been listening to Geography Rocks.